Hello everyone, and welcome back. Today we're going to go over one of the most highly requested topics that I personally get on my YouTube videos, which is, in some form, how to play solo. And while I have clocked quite a few solo missions myself, I think it's slightly misrepresented on my YouTube channel just how much of my total time is spent playing solo, as these days I usually spend at least 90% of my time playing multiplayer, whether it's in a public game or running duo, trio, or even a full stack with people that I know on or off my stream. You can find me over on Twitch, by the way. A lot of people are under the assumption that I only play solo though, which really couldn't be further than the truth. But like I said, I have played a good amount of solo missions, so I'm a decent authority on the topic. So I plan to go over solo in a series of videos because it's very easy to subdivide this topic into smaller, more bite-sized pieces that certain people might only be looking for certain components of, if that makes sense. So the way that I'm planning to break it up is technique and general solo orientation, which is this video, build information, Bosco management and building, and the general flow of each mission type when expressly playing solo. So right out of the gate, let me hit you with a conflicting statement. Solo's harder, but it's also easier. So what do I mean by that? Fundamentally, if you start playing this game today and you boot into solo, you're going to have a harder time winning missions than if you booted into a team. There's multiple reasons for this, but the main reasons being you're limited in the amount of times you can die, and the weight of the world is on your shoulders. But once you establish yourself and learn how to play solo, it is actually significantly easier to win missions in solo than it is in multiplayer. It's not necessarily faster or more efficient or anything, but you have more control over the missions, the way they flow, and the general outcome when playing solo, which is why many people do gravitate towards playing solo in this game. So something I kind of insinuated at is once you learn how to solo, it gets much easier, but I will say that beyond that, learning to solo missions will generally improve your game sense and macro skills faster than playing any amount of multiplayer will. Because there does seem to be a trend of people that join their friends who have already been playing this game for a significant amount of time and end up just getting carried, unfortunately. And I don't mean to say that to gatekeep new players or anything like that. If your friends want to carry you to victory, that's not an issue, but I feel like it cheapens the experience and might deprive those players of some essential learning. So if you think that you're one of those individuals, I would highly recommend that you start trying to play a little bit of solo to kind of build up that game sense and maybe catch up with your friend group. Because playing a certain amount of missions in solo versus a certain amount of missions in multiplayer, you're going to see vastly more improvement, especially in the early game whenever you're playing solo. Like I said, it'll be harder and you'll have to cut your teeth earlier on, and you'll probably lose some missions, but overall it'll be worth it in the long run. If there's only one statement that you take away from this video, I hope it's this. Co-op will only prepare you so well for solo, but solo will prepare you so well for co-op. So kind of jumping off of the point that I just made about not learning as much in multiplayer as you do in solo, the best teams in this game are teams of people that are able to solo and win missions by themselves. Because on a fundamental level, when you aren't depending on your teammates, you'll perform better on your own. And due to that, whenever you work together, it's even more potent. Because everything that you're doing, you're capable of doing yourself, so you're able to isolate and put your best foot forward and take point in things that you exceed at. For example, a gunner that's only ever played multiplayer will probably just ping some nitra that's 5 feet off the ground and move along with his life. But a gunner that has a lot of time and experience playing solo will have the intuition to realize that he has 4 zip lines left in his gun and everyone else is already at half ammo. So, the best course of action for him in that situation is more than likely to shoot a zip line, get up there, and mine that nitra himself, and assume that the scout is busy doing something else. If everything that you know about Deep Rock Galactic is based upon relying on teammates, then I hate to say it, you will be worse than you would be if you had experience playing alone. This rough philosophy is why I so heavily incentivize people when they start playing the game to get some experience under their belt in solo or smaller groups, or at least groups where they're the most experienced player or somewhere around that point. A brand new player getting carried by 3 high-level players for 100 hours, yeah, they're gonna win, but they're not gonna really improve as a player. So now let's kind of shift gears a little bit and start talking about what you're gonna do when you start playing solo missions. It doesn't matter if you're level 1 or level 100, it's never too late to start playing solo, and the skill curve is always going to be there, and you're always going to have to start on it. Solo can be as difficult for a higher level player as it can for a new player. It's a completely different mentality than playing co-op in this game, make no mistake. So let's really get down to brass tacks and look at the first mission that you ever play solo. Some things to isolate before you go into that mission is what class you're playing for the mission that you are playing solo. Now before I misrepresent this point, I want to make it abundantly clear that every class in the game can solo every mission in the game. Some are just significantly harder than others due to the nature of the class being played and the nature of the mission being played. If you are newer to the concept of soloing, it's definitely a good idea to evaluate the mission you're about to play and pick a class appropriate for that mission type. Generally, this isn't too much of an issue, but if your first solo mission that you ever play is Solo Scout on Escort, I can see why you would dislike Solo a little bit. Like I said, Scout is more than capable of doing a solo escort, it'll just require a little bit more involvement and multitasking on your part. But as a brand new solo player, that might result in you losing the mission. So just be careful and kind of have a little bit of perspective on that if you are going to play a difficult class mission combo when you're first starting out. So a unique limiting factor exclusively in solo that is seen nowhere else in the game is a limited amount of times that you can go down. And it makes sense because if Bosco was able to revive you all day over and over again, the game would be impossible to lose. You could simply pickaxe your way through the swarms and just die over and over again. But I will say that this slight change to the core gameplay loop of Deep Rock Galactic makes it significantly more difficult for casual players playing on higher difficulties in solo comparatively to co-op. Where you may not notice that you died 5, 6, 7, 8 times on that Has-4 point extraction, you will certainly notice that when you try to do it in solo, because you won't finish that mission. And that can be a bitter pill to swallow, that there is some level of improvement that needs to be made there and consciousness of how many times that you're dying. So the number one most important tip I can give you for actually playing solo missions is protecting your life above everything else. Because the only thing that's really gonna hard stop beat you on a mission is dying too many times. Depending on the amount of upgrades and whether or not you're taking Iron Will, you can have up to 5 revives over the course of a mission, which is quite generous. But at the lowest point, you can have as little as 2. We'll get into this a little bit more in the Bosco video, but it's important to always be conscious of how many revives you have when you're making decisions. There are the rare instances on something like an escort or a salvage where you might have to die to keep up with the objective, like preparing to red or staying in the zone, and if you have the revives to use, that might be the right choice. But in general, you should always avoid going down at all costs. Now, something that may seem painfully obvious, but a lot of people overlook when it comes to playing solo, is the ammo economy. When playing in 4-player multiplayer, 80 Nitra gives you, as an individual, 50% of your ammo. In solo, 80 Nitra gives you, as an individual, 200% of your ammo. Needless to say, this drastically changes the way that you set up your builds, the way you play your weapons, and just how aggressive you're able to be with the enemies. Because essentially, once you drop a resupply in a mission, until you are separated from that resupply for one reason or another, you have nearly infinite ammo. Being able to hit the same resupply 4 times is ridiculously powerful, and absolutely is warranting consideration when it comes to how you're setting up your builds. We'll talk more about that in the build video. And finally, multitasking. If you do one thing at a time in a solo mission, you may not win, as painful as that is to say. If you have a one-track mind, you will need to improve, because simply focusing on something like Nitra in a refinery mission is going to result in you being massively behind the curve when it comes to actually finishing the mission. Whereas in multiplayer, a scout can spend 10 to 15 minutes just looking for Nitra in a point extraction cave while his team slowly does the objective, doing that in solo will result in your failure, 100%. So let's take refinery for example. You need to be looking for where the pump jacks are, running out a pipeline, building a pipeline, preferably with the help of Bosco, and collecting Nitra at the same time. And that's all the bare minimum, not considering anything like machine events or secondary objectives. And all of that is ignoring the fact that the bugs are going to be attacking you all that while. So that can sound very daunting at first, but I think you'll find that that process is quite enjoyable once you kind of get the hang of it. Being able to multitask and mine and build and fight bugs while also routing out everything and making a plan for the entire cave is intoxicating for myself and many others. Having that absolute control because you are the one and only player in the mission is a great feeling, especially when you succeed. Having controlled every element of that mission, steered yourself to a quick and efficient success with little to no issue is an amazing feeling, and I hope more people get to experience it. So a few things in closing. If you never want to play in a public lobby, or you're just trying to get that 100 solo mission achievement, I wish you the best in solo, but I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It's not for everybody. Some people do find it incredibly boring, and I can start to understand that take more and more the longer I play this game. But on the flip side of that coin, anyone that tells you that the game isn't built or meant to be played in solo is flat out wrong. I agree that a lot of the builds become much more unbalanced when you have essentially infinite ammo at your disposal, but the general flow of solo and the potency of the weapons themselves, I don't like to hear that people say the game isn't meant to be played in solo. That, and I'll take the stance right now that I consider good solo players to be much more valuable in a team than good multiplayer players. If I can trust that someone can do all this stuff by themselves, I absolutely want them to be a part of my team where we only all have to do a part of it. But that about does it for basics and orientation. Just as a reminder, the next videos that come out will be information about how to build and utilize Bosco in solo, how to tweak builds for better play in solo, and general mission flow based on the mission type and each class and how they interact with a solo-specific environment. So stay tuned. If you'd like to talk to me or ask me how the hell I played that many solo missions without going insane, you can find me and my community over on Discord. If you'd like to catch me live, I stream over on Twitch. And if you'd like to join, become a YouTube member, you can check out the join button down below. As always, thank you for watching, and have a nice day.